Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. Something a little bit different today, something that I'm really excited to do and a topic that I'm really excited to talk about. It is different to the channel, it's different to Everton. There is some links to Everton that we will talk about, but we're joined by Gortz of course today, as I'm sure you will all recognise, and we're here to talk about Gortz's home side, his hometown club, his local club, Minnesota United. Of course, a lot of Evertonians may know Minnesota by the fact that they are managed by Adrian Heath, ex-Everton player, Everton legend, Inchie. Of course, me and Gortz have spoke about Inchie and the effect that he's had on Minnesota before on one of the live streams a couple of months back. So we thought, you know what, we'll sit down and we'll just talk about Minnesota as a whole, as a club, the MLS, how different football is over in America, and you know, sort of how well they're doing and how well ultimately Adrian Heath is progressing Minnesota, because you know, obviously he's not a local lad to Minnesota, he's from over here, and you know, he was very successful at Everton, fantastic player, really good work rate, scorer of a lot of goals, fantastic goal scorer, obviously part of that famous 80s team. So to see an ex-Everton player go, you know, abroad over to the States and do really well in the Western Conference is absolutely fantastic. So, Guts, how are you doing, mate? How's things? And how's life for Minnesota United at the moment? Because we know it's very much of a roller coaster for Everton. You don't know what you're going to get with Everton. I mean, you woke up yourself at 5:45 in the morning on Saturday to watch us play a championship side, and we took them to extra time. I dare say you thought that one, you know, you didn't expect that one to quite go on as long as it did. Neither did I, to be honest with you. Sure, we're currently recording this on the day Everton play Wolves, so we just don't know what Everton team we're going to get at the moment. What's it like for Minnesota? Obviously the season's finished now. They finished 4th on 34 points, I believe, in the Western Conference. Was it a good season, just to summarise?
It was definitely a very good season as far as, you know, what we accomplished, and definitely, you know, it was really hindered by, the suspended because
Yeah.
of COVID and everything. But overall, I think it was definitely a step in the right direction. We really found, our we found what, like, definitely made a like I said, made a step forward
Yeah.
as far as like the signings we made, and it was just, is incredible. And made it, after being suspended, made it to the, kind of the tournament. We made it down to the semifinals, where we ended up losing to Orlando, and then finish the season in home markets. And you went like and had to like travel the day of the game, and uh, travel back the like right after the game. And then they decided not to have any fans in the stadium, which was that was really tough, because like Minnesota, you can't talk about Minnesota without our really big fan base. And one of the round that made a lot of like internet buzz as far as soccer was a club tradition started by one of our old managers when we were kind of in the lower league, who was English, and actually is the new manager of the team in Madison, which is a lower league team. And uh, basically started singing Wonderwall after every home win. And so you get that's one thing you missed about the being in the stadium, is the winning and getting to belt out, Wonderwall. And even talking about it right now gives me
Yeah.
goosebumps.
Yeah,
That's how big it is.
yeah, it's been a real tough time for football as a whole, and I always sort of revert back to saying this: it's been a very difficult period in the world for
Hmm.
everybody. I'm not by any means trying to say that 2020 was a fantastic year or 2021 will be, much better. Obviously, we have to have
Hmm.
optimism and we have to have confidence, but at the way things are going at the moment, it's very sad. But I
Hmm.
often revert back to the point that everybody has lived in this same sort of situation. There's not many a times in the world where you will get, a generation of people who are all going through pretty much the exact same thing. And obviously, it's not the exact same thing to every detail because there's some people who won't be affected by, COVID personally, and there's some people whose families will be affected massively by COVID. So I'm not
Hmm.
by any means saying everybody's the same, but I mean in terms of the restrictions and football fans not being able to go to stadiums and shops and restaurants
Hmm.
being closed and the whole working from home that we've got going on in England and in Liverpool specifically at the moment. It almost feels like everybody around the world is going through some form of this sort of change of life that we're not used to. You mentioned fans and not being able to go to Minnesota. I've got a Minnesota scarf just there. It's in the background of every one of my videos, every one of my live streams. And obviously I'd put it on, but it's boiling in my it's boiling in my house, so I might end up fainting halfway through the video if I do. Obviously you kindly provided that when you come down and you watched Everton earlier on in the year of 2020 before we knew any of this was going to happen. If I'm not mistaken, didn't the MLS allow fans into the stadium after the sort of COVID break, and they were one of the first?
Yeah,
Because I'm pretty sure we
they.
spoke about it.
I know, like the lower league, because we kind of U.S. we kind of now, I think starting like a year ago, kind of we went in kind of and got proper because we used to have lower leagues, but like they weren't like properly like, okay, here's the second tier,
Yeah,
third, and fourth. And so last year they kind of they took from England and did MLS is top tier. You have the USL Championship, USL League One, USL League Two, and yeah, and I know the lower leagues, like the champion. I know the League Two, USL League Two didn't have a season, but like League One and the Championship, they had they had their condensed season, and they had fans they had fans.
okay, so
So
Minnesota have had fans back since the suspension then, or have they not?
no, we didn't. We didn't. Since we didn't, I didn't get to funny enough, it was they suspended the season the Friday, the day before our home opener. So that was kind of real, like, it's like, oh, I can't wait, and then it's suspended.
Yeah,
And yeah, and
yeah, it's
it,
it's devastating, isn't it?
mhm, yeah, and it definitely, and COVID, really, it hit the U.S. and
Yeah.
actually had two teams pull out from the MLS's back tournament because they had that many positive cases, or like Colorado, they like didn't play for a whole month because they had an outbreak. Minnesota ourselves, we had like I think we had one game postponed that we ended up going to play, that we played, and then one was just canceled because of an additional test.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely, and going back to Adrian Heath, one criticism that a lot of fans, like including myself at times, make is his lack of substitutions, because to him, like, if we're creating a bunch of chances and we're not putting those chances away, he's like, he doesn't want to sub another attacking player on if that group of attackers are really causing a nuisance. And
Yeah.
he doesn't want to mess with the flow of the game.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things. And then, we finally got over the hurdle of getting our first playoff win at home, even though 2019 we did get a home game against LA, and unfortunately we lost. But so we beat Colorado at Allianz, and then we went down to Kansas City, where we haven't won in 7 meetings. And if there's one thing that the media in Minnesota talk about, it's Minnesota being the underdog, like underdogs, like not the favorites to win. And we went down and we beat them 3-0, and it was very convincing and kind of like open. They're like, oh wow, we can actually go. And then we went to Seattle to play Seattle for our place in the MLS Cup final, and that like became the moment that truly Minnesota United kind of went like, hey, we're a Minnesota sports team by giving up 3 goals in the last 15 minutes.
That's Everton. That's Everton form for you.
Yeah, it really is. And they kind of, because it's also like, a Minnesota sports team where you're leading and then you just like choke at the
Yeah.
end. It's
Yeah. Well,
and then
you come over to Goodison Park in January of 2020 and you watched that Everton team play absolutely astonishingly for 91 minutes of a game. I was sitting in my seat thinking, this has been a great game, the instant match reaction is going to be boss, it's going to be dead great. And within 30 seconds, we've managed somehow to only take a point out of the game because we scored twice, we conceded twice in the last minute. So I know that pain, mate. I definitely know that pain. Just on Minnesota, Minnesota's history, then obviously I've done some research, of course. Began play in 2017. I don't know if that means founded in 2017 or it was
the,
founded a couple of years earlier.
we we were founded. We basically, there's always kind of been a team in Minnesota, even if it's been in the lower league, but like Minnesota really, like, we've gone through a bunch of name changes.
Okay, okay.
Like we were basically founded in like 2010, and we were playing in the North American Soccer League, and then in the 2017 was our first season in MLS.
Okay.
So yeah, so we've done this upcoming season will be season number 5, and I've gone to a game, I think every single no, I think I missed the first. I don't know if I went to a game the very first season. I might have. I don't know.
So,
But
sorry, mate, go on.
so because our first 2 seasons we were still building Allianz Field, so we played our games at the TCF Bank Stadium, which is where the University of Minnesota plays their American football.
Okay.
So that was, and so I went to full, 4 games. I think I went to 4 games there, and then I actually have like a journal of every single Minnesota United game I've been to, and I make notes on it. And actually, coincidentally, the first ever win at Allianz Field was against DC United, and
Uh-huh.
do you know who played that day?
Wayne Rooney.
Wayne Rooney, and that was
Very
that
nice.
was definitely special. And and you can actually see at the end of the games, there are actually opposing players and coaches that actually they'll stay on the field, just on the sideline or on the bench, and just be out on the field so they can actually so they hear the Wonderwall
Yeah,
tradition,
that's amazing.
which yeah, and then there's the whole like like you said earlier before we came on, the as far as the salary and roster, and you want to talk about the rules and regulations. MLS is just
It's different. It's different, and we will go into talking about that because I do think it's important to mention because listen, football, obviously it's called soccer over in America, but I'm going to refer to it as football. Football over in America is very, very different to football over in England, not just in terms of having sort of a Western and an Eastern conference and then a cup at the end of that. Even going back, 20, 30 years ago when penalty kicks used to be taken from the halfway line and the player would run up, or, we're going to talk about the roster rules and regulations in a little bit and salary budgets and stuff like that. Before we get into that, and I do want to highlight some players as well. I know you've mentioned a couple of players that you want to talk about. Obviously, Will Trapp
hmm
being the the latest recruit. What brought you to Minnesota then? Have you always been a fan of football or soccer, I suppose, as you'd
um
call it, or was this something that is new for you, or did who come first really? Was it Minnesota or Everton?
well, it was I kind of got the got the football bug when my family went over to Belgium during the 2014 World Cup, and that was kind of like the beginning of the hot the height of like Belgium's
Yeah,
golden team. And so like we were there, and remember being out and seeing like everybody out, in the bars and pubs watching the game, and even the 80-year-old grandparents are out there, and it's and so I got the soccer bug then. And there you kind of like, oh, you kind of like choose a team. And so like I initially went, like, one year I was like Chelsea, kind of bouncing around trying to find
yeah,
where which club really feels like a club that I support. Like, like I said, I had Chelsea. There was one. I mean, I hate to admit it. There was one season where I was a Liverpool fan, and I'm like, no,
looking back on
no,
it.
this isn't. Yeah, looking back on it, I'm like, no. And then I met my a good friend who's an Everton fan, and I told him, oh yeah, I'm from Minnesota, and at that time Minnesota were in the MLS. And he's like, oh, doesn't like Adrian Heath? And I'm like, yeah, he does. And they're like, he's an Everton legend. I'm like, really? And so then I started getting into Everton, and now I can properly say, you know, I'm born and
Full-fledged
my
Everton.
not, yeah, full, oh, my kids will grow up, supporting Everton,
Yeah,
in the U.S. And
definitely.
so, yeah, it's,
Well, like they say, once Everton has touched you, nothing will be the same. And, ultimately, yeah, I don't think anybody can question your commitment and desire for Everton Football Club, waking up at 5:45 to watch an FA Cup tie
mhm,
against Rotherham and then watching that game and then still being sat here 2 or 3 days later wanting to watch another one. A lot of fans had to watch that game after getting up at 5:45 and thought, nope, 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 that's not for me.
mhm,
But no, that shows the desire, and ultimately that shows
mhm,
the commitment. We spoke about Adrian Heath. We spoke about him multiple times on the channel. obviously, like you mentioned, doing a really good job. There will be criticisms of him in terms of substitutes and
Yeah.
other things, and you know, every fan will have criticisms of every manager. I'm sure there's Evertonians with criticisms of
Hmm.
Carlo at the moment. In terms of players, then, you know, who would you say to look out for if somebody was saying, you know, I want to go and watch Minnesota at the start of next season, I want to get into the
Uh,
MLS, and I'm going to actively make an attempt to get into the MLS as well and start to watch a lot more and watch more of Minnesota, because it does seem like, even though it's just obviously the same sport and it's the same rules
hmm
sort of base wise, I want to get into the sort of
hmm
whys and wherefores and the different types of things that you know are happening in the MLS. So player wise, who would you say to look out for? I know there's, and you know, obviously Will Trapp's come in, Molino's left and gone
hmm
to Columbus Crew. Was that a shock for you with Molino? Was it something that you were unhappy
Um,
about, or?
I was kind of like, it really came to a shock because we offered him the most money that you can offer him,
Okay.
according to, I think it was like the what you could offer a player in 2021, and he turned it down and went to Columbus and said something like, these guys are, proven winners, and kind of, it's time for a new challenge, a new environment. So at that point, I'm like, you can kind of like agree and be like, yeah, there's at times where you feel like you've really like done all you can
Yeah.
there, and it's I'm kind of shocked because the chemistry that he had with arguably probably the guy that I mean, the guy had what uh in 13, he only joined in September, and he had 1 goal and 8 assists in 13 games. And then in the playoffs, he scored an amazing free kick. He basically, uh, uh, Emmanuel Reynoso, um, basically contributed to every single goal in Minnesota's
Really?
playoff
That's some
run.
stat, that.
He had 1 goal and 8 assists.
That's some statistic, that. So I take it, you know, Reynoso, he's a name I've got written down here. I take it he's one of the key players. Who would you say are the best players at Minnesota, or the most exciting to watch? Your key players, if you like.
I would definitely say Reynoso is one. Definitely. There's uh, Hassani Dotson, and then Dane St. Clair
Yeah.
is definitely one. So it's and then like Reynoso, that pickup, it took us like we were in for him in like January, and we like couldn't get, they wanted 7 million, and we signed him from Boca Juniors, and knowing Boca, and the footballers that they produce are just astonishing. And like Boca like actively didn't really want to they didn't really want to sell him, and he actually also had an offer from a Brazilian club who actually wanted to pay him more than Minnesota wanted to pay him. But when we first initially went down, we promised to play him in the in the number 10 role, and and promised, you're gonna wear number 10, and you know how it is in Argentina when how
Yeah.
iconic the number
Yeah.
10 role is, and even more iconic than wearing the number 10,
Yeah.
number 10. He actually got like emotional and broke down into tears when when we said that to him, and he actually almost didn't have a football career because due to an incident when he was 18 years old.
Okay. Okay, so it could have been very different for him then.
Yeah, it's from an article by Andy Greeter, and he said basically uh, Reynoso and his friends, they took a few of his father's motorcycles to visit a friend's house, and then all of a sudden, while they were on their way, four guys on two motorcycles tried to rob him, and they ended up shooting his left knee.
Oh.
He had the bullet removed in surgery, and luck like just magically there was no other damage, and he was only out for 1 month. But
Jesus.
if so, that guy is. I would not be surprised if like he ends up making a jump to Europe, you know in the near future, because I think he has a contract till like 2023. So, and if he can play and if he keeps up the form that he had when kind of at the end, there's no reason why he European clubs would jump at the chance to sign him.
He's 25 years old, isn't he? So he's still in a really good point in his career. I mean, I did not know that. That's, again, it just shows how how fortunate he is and lucky he is. Ultimately, that bullet could have been a couple of centimeters left, right, up or down, and it might have completely shattered his career. So he'll obviously find himself very lucky, and he sounds like a really, really exciting player and a really exciting prospect. And at 25 years old, to come to the MLS and ultimately to get your head down and to work and to be a fan favourite and one of the best players at your club is something to be said. And maybe he will make that jump. Obviously, we've seen a couple of players from the MLS, specifically not Minnesota but the MLS, coming over and making that jump. We've seen Christian Pulisic obviously has come over, now playing for Chelsea. I think it's Pulisic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he came when he was like 16 or like 15. So I don't think he went through I don't think he went through an MLS academy, but you look at like Weston McKennie playing for Juventus. You look at Reggie Cannon, who Boa Vista, Brendan Aronson, going to Salzburg, Mark McKenzie.
Did Reina of Dortmund come through the MLS? Or I know he's American.
He came through New York City FC's academy.
Oh, okay, because he's quality, isn't he? He's some player.
Yeah, he is, and it's kind of funny that his both of his parents were both U.S. internationals as well. So must be that gene, must be his genes. So
yeah, he's definitely been born into that, isn't he? But like you said, Weston McKennie has been fantastic for Juventus. I was just watching some highlights a couple of weeks ago of one of their games, and he scored a brilliant goal, an absolutely fantastic goal. And he's really, for a young lad who's come over, I know he was very, very strong rumours that he could join Southampton in the summer, and in some mad turn of events, he didn't sign for Southampton, he signed for Juventus, and now he's playing alongside Cristiano Ronaldo, and he looks absolutely fantastic in that Juventus side. So there's some really, really good talented players over in the MLS, and again, I've spoke before about the MLS being a market, certainly for Everton, because I'm Everton. I'm sure it's a market for other European teams, but I think there's some really, really hidden sort of talent over in the MLS that sides like Everton could potentially approach and bring in. Obviously, Will Trapp is an experienced player, recently come in to the club, first signing I believe of the summer. Are you excited about seeing him play for Minnesota? What do you think he can bring to the team?
I definitely think he's kind of alternate to just in case we don't bring back Ozzy
Okay.
Alonso, who I mean, you want to talk about the best defensive midfielders and like that have ever graced MLS. You can't not bring up Ozzy Alonso. That guy is just he's definitely one of the top
Up there.
defensive midfielders. And if I don't know if he could do it in Europe now because he's 35, but like he basically made his he spent 10 years with Seattle, won MLS Cups, won the US Open Cup, the competition. I mean, and then you can kind of, wanting to kind of phase out, the older players and kind of bring in new and kind of, Will Trapp is he's kind of like that player, but, um, he plays kind of the same role that Ozzy does, but kind of a different style of play. Like he plays more like a regista, kind of more like playing that Pirlo-esque
Okay.
role compared to Ozzy's kind of hard no. I think it was I was reading an article and on the minister, and they basically said like he's like a hard nosed bulldog where he stops the counterattack from developing, and he's not afraid to throw in a challenge and kind of help dictate play. And definitely
Yeah.
that's definitely, and uh that depending on that might be a detriment to also one of the other players that I brought up was Hassani Dotson, who was selected 31st in the 2019 Super Draft. So, like the Super Draft is kind of like, you know, the, we have to Americanize
Yeah.
it somehow, and you get all you get the college players,
Okay.
and it's basically like the equivalent of like the NFL and that. And he's a natural midfielder, but he can play at either fullback,
Okay.
and he's incredible. And one of the things that he's kind of known for is he loves to score a banger from outside the box.
Somebody Everton
If
could
you
do
just
with.
like, yeah, like definitely. And our he's also he's probably scored some of the most iconic goals in Minnesota history. Definitely, definitely some of his bangers are just like you look and you're just like, how can that? How can he? How can you put it there? And you look at the defenders and you're like, how come like no one isn't pressuring him to do
Yeah.
that? Or he also scored the goal. I was there against, and it was against Sporting Kansas City at Allianz Field, where he scored like in the 90th minute to clinch our spot in the 2019 playoffs. That was another one. So he's definitely one for the future as well.
Yeah. Definitely. Sounds like some player. Like I said, I'll have to keep an eye out on. all of these players. I'm definitely, like I said, I'm definitely going to make more of a conscious effort to watch the MLS and to get involved with that. Let's go into talking about the rules and stuff then. Look, I know we've got a lot to talk about, and I know you've got a lot to talk about, so I'd love to have you on the channel again at some point in the future to talk more Minnesota, maybe even when the season started. I'll try and sit down and watch a few games and get involved, and then we can have, a little bit more of a back and forth. But I want to talk about the roster rules, draft, stuff like that. It's massively different to European football and ultimately the football that, as Evertonians, we all know and watch every single day. It's pretty simple. We go out, we play football, you sign a player. There's probably a lot more in it, but to us, it just seems like, the everyday stuff, whereas it's very, very different over in the MLS, isn't it? There's a lot more to be done. There's salary budgets, there's caps, there's certain amount of players and slots you can have. Do you want to just give an explanation, I suppose, in the best way that you can? Because I read through the roster rules before and my head was just scrambled with it.
I'm basically like, you're only allowed 30 players, and 20 of those players count against the club's salary budget, okay, while 10 don't count. So, and yeah, I have it right. I have it pulled up in front of my computer right now, and I'm still like,
see, doesn't even make sense to you. I believe the salary budget is $4.9 million. Is that yearly, is it?
I think it might change year to year. I don't know. So once it closes, like the first roster freeze of 2021, once that freezes, I'll probably pop on and see if that changed, and then there's also the international spots and the designated player rule, which is, the designated player rule is, commonly known as the Beckham rule, because it's kind of like when David Beckham came over, he really changed MLS for the better when he came over.
Yeah.
And
but he brought more eyes to it, didn't he? Which ultimately is what's needed. More people watching, more people being involved, more of a global fan base, and that's what somebody like a David Beckham does to a league ultimately, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've had David Beckham, we've had Pirlo, Kaká,
Wayne Rooney.
Wayne Rooney.
You had the other fella who plays for the other lot, who I shall not name.
Yeah.
Central midfielder.
Yeah, no, that I didn't. I don't. Yeah, he was. Yeah, I didn't understand that pickup, but
Steven Gerrard.
Slippy G.
Yep, Slippy G. He went over there, didn't he, for about 10 minutes, and then ultimately.
Yeah, and ultimately hung it up and like, yeah, I'm done. And
but you're right. There's been a lot of names, a lot of popular names, a lot of players with big followings, with big histories, and I don't necessarily. And this is what sort of, I wouldn't say frustrates me, but I understand why they go over, and I know the general consensus usually, or certainly it has been for a long time, and I think this is starting to be changed now because of your Weston McKennies, because of your Reyners of Dortmund, and even Pulisic has come over as an American-born footballer, and you know, because of these players that are coming over to European leagues, and people are looking at them and going, actually, he's a top talent. And where was he before this? He must have been at Barca or Real or Bayern. Oh no, he wasn't. He was at Minnesota. He was at Columbus. He was at New York Red Bulls. So because of that, I think the attitude surrounding the MLS is starting to change. But it did used to be, oh, if he wants to go there to retire, then you'll go and play in America. You'll go and play in the MLS. You've got the lifestyle. You've got the and you've got to that. And whilst that works for those players coming towards the end of the career, ultimately it also works for the MLS, because football is a sport where I follow Everton, Gort follows Everton, he follows Minnesota. You know, everybody watching this video will follow a footballing team. But the reality of the situation is, some fans, including maybe some fans that are watching, will follow players. We have seen it directly firsthand with Everton Football Club in the last 6 months with James Rodriguez. James Rodriguez come to Everton. His social media post with his announcement was viewed by millions of people. The announcement was in New York, it was in Miami, it was in Colombia, it was all over the world, and we had thousands, hundreds of thousands of millions of Colombian football fans coming over and supporting Everton. I seen it directly, just me, little old Cam sitting here in my bedroom talking to me camera on Skype to some brilliant people like Gortz doing videos. I saw it directly, the amount of subscribers that I gained, the views that I gained based off of James Rodriguez coming to Everton Football Club. My second most viewed video on the channel is the instant match reaction to the West Brom game, because it's titled James is World Class, because he was brilliant in that game. That just shows the eyes that bringing players like that can have, not just to the club, but to a league. And you might say, oh yeah, but James has come to Everton at a good point in his career and he's still got a lot to offer, this, that and the other, and he has. And you know, maybe Wayne Rooney had a lot to offer to the MLS because it's a different style of football, and maybe, you know, no disrespect, but maybe some of the players in the MLS haven't got the quality that Wayne Rooney has, or at least had. So it's not a bad thing for players to go over and play in the American League, because it brings eyes to the league. And you might be you know, a Kaká fan, or you might be a Pirlo fan, and you might go, oh, he's gone to New York City FC, I'll go and watch him. And then you might think, oh, that player's brilliant, that player's, oh, I love the way the fans do that, or I love this manager, and you fall in love with these clubs. So it's a positive thing, isn't it, mate? Even though it's got, you know, formerly it had negative, I wouldn't say negative, but some people maybe looked at it and didn't give it the respect. Now with the younger players coming through and the quality of the younger players coming through, as well as fans that watch the MLS actually think, you know what, there's some real good talented players here, there's some real good quality football teams, the fans loving it, the fans are involved. It's got to be a good thing to have more eyes on the sport ultimately, because it's not a massive, well, it's not, I wouldn't say it's not a massive sport in America, but it's certainly not the biggest sport in America, is it, football or soccer?
Yeah, no, certainly it's you know, nah, but it's definitely on its way up and up with the quality, and definitely the match day experience is, you know, you go and to be in, chanting for, 90 minutes, and going to the game, and then belting out for 90 minutes, coming back, just hoarse, and you're like, yeah, okay, yep, I'm going back next week, and your voice is all back, and then you belt it out again and go hoarse again, and
it's emotion, isn't it? And that's what football's about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Spot on. It is, and hopefully, obviously, post everything that's going on in the world now, Gortz will be able to get back into Minnesota. I'd love to come over to the States and watch a Minnesota game and watch the MLS, and like I said, I am going to make a conscious effort to get more involved with the league and Minnesota themselves and the players and stuff, because I think it's a league that ultimately we need to be paying attention to and we need to be looking at, and again, some really, really good talented players are coming out of it, and players are now coming from international clubs wanting to play in the MLS at the peak of their career because of the eyes that are around it, and ultimately because of the opportunities that come, and that's a positive thing for the league. And we're seeing that. Gort, big thanks for coming on, mate. Have you got anything else to say before we finish up? We'll definitely do another one of these videos, by the way, where we sit down and we just focus on Minnesota and their progress and the MLS. But before we round this one up, have you got anything to say before we go?
Just it. I mean, everybody loves Minnesota, and no matter what you do, what support. Minnesota is, we're one big happy family that, that is, uh, that just loves cheering on our boys in blue. And, we love our, manager as well.
That's
And
brilliant.
so,
I want one of them. I need one of them. That is absolutely brilliant. I'm gonna have to get myself one. I'm gonna have to get myself a shirt as well. Like you've mentioned there, one thing I've learned certainly from this video, and I hope everyone else has learned, is Minnesota are a very family orientated club, a club that are full of fans that won't just swap and go and support New York Red Bulls or the Seattle Sounders or whoever's the top team. They're fans that'll stick through thick and thin, very much like ourselves. Gort mentioned before about Minnesota getting into a MLS Cup situation and conceding a couple of goals in the last 15 minutes of a game. If that's not Everton, that's got Everton written all over it, that getting into a really good position and then throwing it away in the last 10 minutes after doing really well. And I think they're a fantastic club, obviously managed by an Everton legend, which should be enough incentive to go and watch and see how Inchy's doing, and ultimately watch the league, which is what I'm going to try and do. Gort, massive thanks for coming on, mate. We'll definitely get you on at some point within the next couple of weeks to talk more Minnesota and the MLS roundup. When does the new season start?
they haven't announced it. Usually the schedule comes out after the college draft, and I think the college draft is the
Of
21st.
January, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought, like, reports are saying that there's like March is when it would probably start.
Okay, well, we'll definitely get you on before March anyway. That's a long way away, and we'll hopefully we'll do a little season preview ahead of it. Hopefully we've got more
Yep.
signings to talk about, and and more talking points. So big thanks to Gorts for coming on. Listen, like I said at the start, a little bit different this video, but I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. If you've enjoyed it, please do hit that like button. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below as well. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Go and check out Gorts in the description down below. Follow him on Twitter. They're very dedicated, one of the most dedicated Everton fans I know, and obviously a fantastic fan of Minnesota as well. So check him out in the description down below. Please leave the video a like, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you soon.